Today's lecture, if you look at the online guide, is supposed to be about Martin Luther King, the establishment of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, as well as the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And I'm going to do my absolute best to get us to that moment. We should be able to do it. But because of the lost lecture due to the midterm, this is sort of my last attempt to get us back on schedule. So I want to canvass a slightly larger period. Today I plan on discussing some critical aspects of the Montgomery bus boycott and the integration of Central High School in Little Rock, events from 55, 56, 57. By doing so, it allows me to talk about a very important aspect of the movement that I've made an allusion to already once or twice in the course, but you'll certainly see it coming up time and again over the next few weeks of the course, and that is the issue of respectability. Just as we can look at the late 19th century and issues of being civilized, of having proper sort of normed middle class behaviors is very important to at least the black leadership, elite class. Being respectable, being the right kind of person is fundamental to understanding a lot of the civil rights struggles. Now let's look at the Montgomery bus boycott, and I'm going to presume that in the history of the Montgomery bus boycott and the desegregation of Central High School, this is now American History 101, that you should have had the gloss of it when you're in high school, and I'm sure you didn't get much more than the gloss, and I'm sure the gloss was wrong. But what I want to do is actually give you, you know, the mythic narrative of these things, which is there for a reason, and I want to give you some background details that are important to consider. So as far as the boycott is concerned, Montgomery bus boycott, there's a standard history that has become mythic. Rosa Parks, the tired seamstress, refuses to give up her seat on the bus in Montgomery, and she gets arrested. Martin Luther King comes swooping in to her rescue and then rises to the national scene with his leadership of the year-long boycott, 13-month boycott that would ensue shortly thereafter. I was looking at the syllabus last night and realized I dropped a reading for you, and I want to encourage you to go back and look at it now. I'm referencing it right now. I believe it's pages 352 to 361 in the Manning Marable anthology. It just slipped out of the syllabus by accident. And in those pages, you'll see Joanne Gibson Robinson, a prominent black woman in Montgomery, explain her version of the events around the bus boycott. Just even knowing about Joanne Gibson Robinson changes the story of the bus boycott. Robinson was part of a cadre of middle-class African-American women, sort of think of the club women from the late 19th century that I talked about a few weeks ago, who had already organized into a force, the Women's Political Council. These were women who were well-educated, college-educated, some of them teaching at a local college. These were sort of the elite, although they weren't rolling in money. These were the elite in black Montgomery. The Women's Political Council, with Joanne Gibson Robinson's leadership, she's one of the key figures in it, has already gone to the black ministers in town and the city government in town about their frustration over the way that blacks are treated on the buses and the way they are treated in stores downtown. Economic boycott is the words that are floating around. They wanted to try to develop the courage in the black community to get a boycott organized. The Women's Political Council keeps running into dead ends in various places. They might get a meeting, but the meeting, frankly, where men were in the leadership position, would be rather condescending to the women. That's very sweet of you to come in, but you know, we'll take care of things. Now, nothing would happen. Now, the Women's Political Council actually tries to organize boycotts of the buses around issues of crisis, and this is when other people get arrested for refusing to give up their seat. Now, if you look at the selection in the Marable reading and Joanne Gibson Robinson's recounting of the bus boycott and Rosa Parks' arrest, you might find something striking. When I was actually going back and looking at it tonight, like, God, how did I forget to include this? If you scan it, as I did several times, for Martin Luther King's role, you will only see King's name mentioned once, and quite literally in the second to last line, I believe, of this reading. Now, this is an excerpt, granted, things might have been dropped out, But if nothing else, metaphorically, it's actually a very important point. King was not there, not engaged in the organizing early organizing moments of the bus boycott, what would turn into the bus boycott. Now, why bother telling this story? Just because it's inserting new cast of characters? Well, maybe that's part of it. Maybe because it's pointing to the role that women played in the movement, had always played in the movement. That's certainly part of it as well. But another part of it's important to know is that the bus boycott its success was incumbent upon many different factors. It wasn't just King's charisma, although we cannot ever discount King's charisma. Part of it was dealing with an already established and organized, politically organized black middle class that is basically organizing is done through their women. There's already then a network of activists in place upon which King's charisma could be displayed, or through which. I don't know what the right descriptor is. It basically starts to muddy up the narrative of the civil rights movement, this amazing moment of the movement. But there's more to the story, always, more complicating factors. Rosa Parks was arrested, there's no doubt about that. But it wasn't as spontaneous